I appreciate you all taking the time to, as the panel. I'm going to introduce just Mark, who's over there with his hand held high, and I'm actually going to. He already has a microphone on, which is even better. No mic. Oh, you don't have a. No mic. Okay, so I guess I give you mine. Okay, we're going to toss it back and forth. Yes, so this panel is going to be about, it's a practitioners panel, so we're going to talk about CI/CD and how it covers a range of environments, technologies, and tools. And so this discussion with experienced CI/CD practitioners, we're going to hear some stories from them, learn their experiences, and some insights into software delivery. I suspect we're going to have a lot of stuff around AI as well. And so I'm sure
we'll see.
We'll see.
So sure, but we'll see.
Yeah, I feel like you probably asked AI for the questions.
No.
No? Okay, so these are all like straight from the brain of Mark.
Okay. We had a pretty heated discussion over AI over lunch.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, when you get into arguments with AI, that's where it's really revealing about yourself. Really, is what I feel. So, anyways, I'm going to stop talking. You're welcome, and turn it over to Mark.
So, I need the mic. Don't take the mic away. That's right. So needy. Wow, that's breathtaking to be called a finance person. I love that. That's awe-inspiring. Okay. We're going to have our panelists introduce themselves. Brett, please, first.
So I'm Brett Smith. I work at SAS Institute. Anything I say today is my own opinion. And SAS Institute's an AI and machine learning analytics company. We've been around for 50 years. I have the title of Distinguished Software Developer, but it's because we only have a couple of titles and they ran out. But I architected most of our pipelines for most of the products that we build and ship to customers, and the security holes are my fault.
Okay, so reminding, SAS has been in the software business for like 50 years.
1975, started on NC State campus, and yeah.
So now we're going to, I have to do an audience thing. How many of you were born after SAS was formed? Okay, good, thank you. There's some experience in this group already, right? That's the hint.
I've been at SAS 12 years, and I'm a puppy.
Right,
Most
exactly.
people you talk to have been there for 30 plus years or 25 plus years. And my boss who retired recently, she worked there 39 years.
So there are things to be learned from people with experience. Thanks very much. Next, Bob.
Hi, my name is Bob Walker. I'm the field CTO at Octopus Deploy. We are a software delivery company, so we focus exclusively on deployment. So we integrate with GitHub Actions, Jenkins, all that other good stuff. I've been with Octopus Deploy since 2018. My one claim to fame is that I was the first US-based employee that was hired, because Octopus Deploy is based out of Brisbane. In fact, my very first day, I boarded a plane to Brisbane, Australia. So I figured even if the CEO hates my guts, free trip to Australia. And so in terms of my history, I've been with Octopus Deploy for 7 years. Prior to joining, I was actually an Octopus Deploy customer, where I helped automate a number of different deployment pipelines. I cut my teeth on database deployments, believe it or not.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Bob. Ben.
Yeah, I'm Ben Powell. I work for Apple as a software engineer. I work on the SDP Spinnaker team, so that's a continuous delivery service. I make Spinnaker really efficient. Over the last 2 years, I made Spinnaker reduce its memory size by 92%. So just kind of give you an idea.
So Ben, to me, that one says there is still abundant room for improvement in software delivery.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? We're not done getting good at software delivery. We are probably a long ways from getting done.
Ben left out that he and I are in the CD events working group.
Oh, okay.
Even though he doesn't think I'm still in it because I haven't been there for 3 months. But
All right.
The point is that I have worked with Ben a lot on in the CD Foundation.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks very much. Melissa.
Thanks for being here, everybody. I am going to represent the dev part of this DevOps atmosphere here. I've been a developer for most of my career, primarily server-side applications, software engineering, lots of enterprise work with getting stuff out into the cloud. And then my most previous employer was JFrog, so lots of DevOps stuff going on there. I was a developer advocate there for a few years, and lots of educating of developers is needed, especially around security, I've noticed. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about this today.
Thanks. Kate.
My name is Kate Scarcella, and I worked with IBM for over 20 years. I'm a cybersecurity architect, and basically, so actually it's been 25 years. So I think I'm the oldest one here, and
Doubt it.
And actually, I say that
I challenge that, but that's okay. My grandchildren are not going to fight with you about that. All right. So but that's good. Let's play that game if you need to. I'm not sure you want to go there.
So anyway, I basically, when I have my Master's of Science in Information Security, and when I graduated from I did my thesis in securing the electrical grid, and why this is important is that when I went into cybersecurity, when I graduated, there was only 4 people in my graduating class. So it was extremely a very, very new field. And application security, I literally started the security of it with static code analysis and dynamic, and, grew up with it. So thus, I'm the one who comes in and makes the jobs hard.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. All right. Let's start. First question. So there have been, I've got to use my written form. There we go. And I got to put on my glasses so I can read. I don't want to hear about it. Okay, so to Ben's comment, have there been cases that you'd be willing to share with the group here where and to the group as a whole, so I'm going to look for you to each raise your hands as appropriate. Have there been cases where you've found ways to strike a balance in cost and equipment between doing too much, not doing enough, et cetera, in your software delivery processes? Okay, so all right, so Ben, we'll go to you first. Then, Bob, thank you. Thanks very much, Fred.
Yeah. So, I believe so. I think for the most part, like a lot of our costs come from infrastructure. We want to dynamically scale things, do it in an automated fashion. And so, in the open source world in Spinnaker, we just released the mono repo. So this mono repo takes because Spinnaker has like 12 different services. And so we wanted to put everything in one single repo because everything depended on this common library. And so because of this, it made builds needing to be cross repo and made pulling things, it made it very, very expensive. So we needed several different Docker images, but now with one of my colleagues, Joe, he's awesome. And he went through the time and effort to make it all automated, and I think it's all running on GCP. It might be on AWS, but I think it's on GCP. Okay. But they spend a lot of time making sure it's optimized, making sure that using whatever the GCP equivalent of like spot instances, and making sure that the pipelines are efficient, and using GitHub Actions, and just making sure that the costs made a lot of sense there. And he did a great job. Now it's just a single button. You just click, and it just goes, and you deploy.
So you changed the number of repositories in order to reduce costs.
Yep. Well, it's a combination. It was more of a side effect, because what happened was pull requests were very hard to maintain, because you would have to imagine 12 different PRs, right, across 12 different repos, and then if you wanted to test them, you would have to pull them all down as locally and then run them to check them. But with the mono repo, you have a single PR, you just pull that one down, you test it, you can verify it. Or if you want to just like validate something inside of that PR yourself, you don't have to go look at another PR that references that common PR. So yeah.
So you saved money, it sounds like, and improved the experience for the people contributing.
Exactly, yeah.
Cool, very good.
Yeah, so for us, we kind of took a slightly different approach. So the most expensive thing is developer time. And so if they have to sit there and they have to wait, that is significantly more expensive than it does for any sort of amount of spot infrastructure or anything along those lines. Now, that being said, there are certain things that we can do to improve it. So for example, we use TeamCity. So we're looking at things like agentless builds. How can we spin that up? How fast can we do something along those lines? But really what the big thing that we look at is how can we improve the overall build time and reduce that down as much as possible so we can get feedback faster. So a canonical example would be the cup of coffee. I go check in something, go get a cup of coffee. By the time I come back, hopefully I have something ready to go that I can test, I get feedback on, I get all those other things. because I haven't lost all that context. So I don't have to go back into the flow or anything like that. So the cost savings, yes, we have a pretty expensive Azure bill, but the cost savings in terms of developer time is definitely worth it. So there's always going to be a balance between the two. We can't just have an unlimited budget to just spin the Azure dial as fast as we can. So there are certain things that we do, obviously, spin up and down infrastructure throughout the day. But again, it's really in the name of time.
I like that one. Brett, you look like you might have a comment there. Developer time as a real cost, as a thing for consideration, because it is a real cost, right? It's probably even a measurable cost. 10 more minutes in the job of a human being waiting for that is probably 10 minutes there thinking about something else, or worse, getting distracted.
So just to give you an actual measurable example, one of our customers, they specifically bought us because they said, we believe that this can save or improve developer efficiency by 3%. When you look at it, that's 15 minutes a day. That's it. But when you have 5,000 developers, that adds up a lot.
Got it. All right. Brett, Melissa? Yeah. Brett, we'll go to you first.
I can wait.
Okay, Melissa, you go first then.
You're so polite, Brett. Thank you. So I really like that you brought up developer time, because that was a big deal where I worked. I think as you know, new people are coming in all of the time. So we kind of take for granted sometimes that our teams are full of educated and experienced members who already know this stuff and already understand the basics. And in my experience, that is absolutely not the case. You're always going to have a junior, and if you don't have a junior on your team, you should, because you need to keep that ball rolling, right? And one of the things that we learned right away was, I'm a Java developer, still am, I love it, I love Java. But my particular project, when I was I just remember this because I got mentored really well on this, was educating your team about the build. So if you've got new people coming onto your team, make sure the very first they learn is how that build works and how all the modules fit together. Even if it's just for the same reason of sitting there, being able to focus on one module that you want to update and only build that module, rather than sit there and wait for the entire thing to build because you don't know any better. So just little things like that, go back to the basics. Make sure you're paying attention to that.
Thank you. Brett, to you, and then Ben.
So I took our pipeline from quarterly delivers to customers to 8 hours, from source commit to merge to out the door, 8 hours from quarterly. And I did it through, we built out an event-driven system. We have, it turned the pipeline asynchronous. Tasks could all be run at the same time. And at the same time, what I did was, as we shifted everything left, we could shift left that made sense, right? Developers don't like to run security scans. I don't like to run security scans.
Don't like is such a polite term. Hate. Resent.
Well, we know my stick. You got to stick to the bit, right? I hate security. But I was in charge of our EO 14028 attestation work. Yeah. Well, so what they did was they found the guy who made all the security holes, and they made him the lead security guy, and it just happened to be me. So we have, the event-driven system let us go asynchronous, right? And then shifting left saved developer time. And the way Bob and Melissa covered it was pretty much what we're talking about, where the developer's not going and manually running his check marks and his black duck. I also got rid of check marks and black duck, which were slow, and I moved to Sneak, and Sneak is way faster, right? So I'm speeding up the feedback loop, and then we crash and fail earlier, and then we move to GitHub, and then the actions run and blow up faster, and which really excites the developers, right? Especially when the robots are what failed and not their stuff. Then they blame me, and then I find someone else to pawn the blame off on. But the thing here is that the event-driven system made us go asynchronous, the shift left, and then we automated all the things right that I thought were tedious and ridiculous for developers to be working on. You're not a security professional. You're not a security professional. I know, I've talked to you a lot. And you know, so we've got a automation team for our security automation. Now, we generate JIRA issues for you when we find your CVEs. So, but you don't have to generate the JIRA issue, right? You just got to go within the 30 days, go update your stuff. And these are the type of things you do to as a platform engineer, see, because, did you see how I dodged that? I was a sysadmin, a DevOps guy, an SRE. Now I'm a platform engineer, still doing the same stuff.
What do you know? The title changes, but oddly enough,
You guys-
the responsibilities didn't
it's
alter a whole lot.
Same stuff I've been doing forever. But what we do now is we built out a platform, and it's, they call it an IDP. It's an internal developer platform, and you're supposed to make the developers' lives easier, and we do sometimes. We also make it bad sometimes because we have an observability problem because the guy who designed it didn't think about that, right? We should find him and make him chief lord of the observability guy.
Right, wonder who that is.
Right, and then so you've got this internal developer platform so that the developers get to, if you can get your developers to the point where they barely leave their IDE, right, you're going to improve your time to live. And then if you automate all of your testing, right, so we have 208, 210 containers get deployed in a via 4 deployment, and then we have test containers that run against it all through automation. Nobody runs any of this testing by hand. They run their testing by hand before they push their PR, right? But even then, we've given them tools to run that testing below the line before they push their PR, right? And so those are the type of things you have to do to speed up if you can increase the velocity like 48%, you'll get more than 3%. You can get to 5 or 10%, and those are astronomical numbers when you're talking about 3,000 to 5,000 developers.
If I could just add, from a cybersecurity perspective, that speed has actually been a problem with cybersecurity. And one of the things that we found is that we would have, developers have a phenomenal, results, but then it hadn't been tested from the beginning. And so that was really something that is still in play today. And it's so important to, what we say is really, get to that beginning and to look at that and to do the security checks. And I think just to add with what Melissa was saying, coders are not coming out being secure code developers in school, right? And so we really need to have a practice established, at the businesses that have good coding practices. So.
Can I tell a story along that line?
Please, Melissa,
So
go ahead.
I have a daughter. This is so important for anyone who's like super passionate about coding, which I think we all were when we were young, right? We're first starting out.
Still
we are, yes, but we're measured, right? We know more. We're careful. But when you're first starting out, it's so exciting. And I have a daughter who was super excited about Python, and she was all over it. She's like, oh, guess what this library does? And guess what this library does? She was doing all this thing, and then I realized she's on my home network. What is she doing? We need to have a conversation. So this is important, and don't assume that a person coming into your company knows. Oh, here's another one where one of the developers, they couldn't get a package downloaded that they wanted, but they didn't realize that was for a reason and on purpose. So they went home, downloaded it, and brought it back and said, oh, it works now. So yeah, little things like this, you got to catch it.
Great. Brett, your comment?
Yeah, I don't know if we were going to go into the security of all this.
We are. So security is actually the next topic. Let's take it. Go.
So yeah, we start to talk about maturity, your security maturity for your company, right? As you're a 27-man startup, all of you guys wear the security hat, and none of you actually care because you're just trying to survive until the venture capital comes in again or doesn't. And I've been on the doesn't side a lot more than I've been on the it came in. So you start small and just start doing whatever you can to automate your security. I don't care what it is, right? Just get started at it. Don't be a perfectionist, just get it going. The next thing though is as you mature, right, you can move those security things outside like I have, right? But then you start to talk about your build system, right? And the old pipeline, before I had to do the executive order stuff, I had a lot of curl pipe bash shenanigans where developers are curl pipe bash stuff off the internet, and you've got to stop that. And then so you need a third-party onboarding process, and then you need, if at the bare minimum, you need a proxy that they pull the packages through for NPM and Go. And I'm not going to, well, here's free advertising for JFrog. We use Artifactory for that, and then we lock down the pipeline. right? And then the build section of the pipeline is locked down. And then we built it out with GitHub Actions after I killed off all the Jenkins nodes.
You didn't hear that, all right? That's I appreciate that Brett would say
Well, you still
such a
have
thing.
Jenkins nodes. I'm kidding you. I can't kill them. They won't die. So we built out the GitHub Actions right on top of Kubernetes. And then what we did was we threw Cilium underneath the Kubernetes cluster, and we locked down the network. And then we built policy agents that use OPA and Rego with policy that says you can only go to these certain places. And then I had a revolt, and they came after me with pitchforks and torches because they're like, our stuff won't build. And I said, you have curl pipe bash shenanigans. And if you don't know what curl pipe bash shenanigans is, it's just where developers try and get around and circumvent the process and the policies to get stuff into their product so they can ship it to the customer. And I finally got it to the point where they can't do that anymore. And there was one hole at the end, and I'm going to close that one, and they're going to come after me again. But those are the type of things you progressively work at over time. You're not going to be able to just flip the switch. And plus, if you can sneak it up on developers, they don't know what's coming. And it slowly gets in there, and they're like, wait. And then they change it, and they don't even know that they fixed their security hole because their build wouldn't work. And then you have mind control over them.
Don't you love when you hear the phrase mind control? Ben, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm actually very passionate about security, so shout out to you. But so I used to actually work at AWS, so I was on the SDKs and tools team and ECS. But my first year there, I was tasked with writing this library it was a crypto library, and I knew nothing about crypto, so I had no idea why they assigned it to me. So I was just like, wow, this is really weird. And so I implemented like all the algorithms, and I was just like, oh yeah, we can just ship this. And then one of the leads called me. He was like, hey, did you get like a security review? I was like, what is that? You know, I'm like, what is security review? They're like, no, you have to go through like a process. So like AWS, even Apple, we all have these processes. So anytime we're touching any sort of important pieces of code, that we have to go through these security processes. So if your company does not have one, I would really encourage you to go out and try to make one, because it's very, very important. But what happened was, after I submitted the code to the security engineer, he was like, your code's can be timing attacked. And I was just like, I don't even know what that is. And so apparently with cryptography, depending on how you implement it, you can be subject to timing attacks, which is depending on when you send a request and when it comes back, they can measure that time and to get some sort of information about the secret. So it was a knowledge that after that I became like so interested in security. So and it was a lesson learned, but it really shows you the importance of process and having that in place to not only protect yourselves but protect your customers, right?
Thank you. Kate, I'm going to defer to you. Ben? Bob. Sorry, Bob. I'll get the names right. BBB. There's something about
we're not very friendly in that sense.
Ben, Bob, Brett. Go ahead, Bob.
Yes. So a couple things, like when it comes to the security of, say, your software delivery pipeline, one of the most interesting conversations I always have with customers is, how do I reconcile drift? So we have this expectation of how we expect production to look like.
Please describe drift first before the phrase. Maybe everybody else is clued into it, but drift for me is a concept that took me some time to learn.
Yes. So
Please
yes.
Describe drift. What is drift?
Yeah. So we imagine you have expectation of how production should be configured. It could be, say, a virtual machine has these specific libraries, or your SQL server, their schema looks like this. And then when you don't have that matchup, that's where that drift is. So I have this desired configuration, I have the current configuration, and then why does that drift occur? And so people are like, how do I prevent drift from happening at all? And, well, how do I reconcile drift? I'm like, why is drift happening? Well, it's like, I give DBAs, they have production access directly, and they can make whatever changes they want. I'm like, well, that's a recipe for disaster. Just giving them that type of blanket access. So that's one of the very first things we say is, okay, you got to cut all of that. Just like eliminate all of that. So then that's part of it. So it's just kind of going through and slowly start removing the permissions in various things like cloud account controls. There should be no reason why a developer should ever log into the cloud console ever. That should all be abstracted away through various jobs and everything like that. And then the other thing that it kind of comes up in my mind is when we start talking about software delivery pipelines, and kind of just a show of hands, who has is your most experienced developers in charge of your software delivery pipelines, or typically is it more junior developers? Because you would be surprised. Number of companies that I talk to, it's the most junior developers that are involved with that. So just a show of hands, who has the most experienced developers in charge of your software delivery pipelines? I'm curious.
So in my case, it was the manager who was in charge of the pipeline. It was even worse.
That's even worse, yes.
Right? So,
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
So,
Why?
yeah,
Because nobody else wanted to do it.
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of.
Yeah, so when you have the most junior people, they don't have the concept of security, and so things like this can just slip through their cracks, and it happens.
So now I'm going to offer a question. How has, over the course of your experience, how has security in software delivery changed? And what are there key things you would offer as, important change here, and maybe backing story why that change was important? How has, because we've got years of experience on the panel. Think about what you've seen in the shift in software security. What's happened to software security and to security and software delivery? Go ahead. Melissa, you want to take it first?
Sure. I'm going to focus on permissions. You brought it up. I'm going to focus on that and give you really good reasons why you need to care about this and not to get lazy about it. How many of you have admin access to something? How many of you have admin access to all the things?
All the things, almost.
Yeah. How many should have admin access to all the things? Okay. So we do talk a lot about external, problems. We don't want to get attacked. We don't want these vulnerabilities. But there's also a big thing called internal accidents. And I have seen that happen. And we had a situation where we were trying to implement a best practice and make sure that all of our config was separate from our applications, right? So we were doing config as a service and stuff. The problem is that we all had access to all the config, even like the production config. And part of this particular bundle, we had to use a message broker. This message broker would accept jobs, work the jobs, and deliver results, right? Well, we also were implementing a new testing area where we would test the jobs, and it took a few days for us to realize why none of the jobs were getting processed in production. And it was just simply because someone accidentally had the production permission set up in their test environment. So their test environment was picking off jobs out of production. So silly things like that, just make sure that you've got permission set up, not just for people and individuals too, but for your bots, your automated users that automatically deploy. Make sure that those automated users do not have access to things they shouldn't have access. You never want to get a test artifact deployed in production by accident.
And that's known, right, as least privilege. So least privilege is your friend.
Wait a sec, Kate. Okay, now I've got to object to that because least privilege sounds very unfriendly. Brett, you were telling about how unfriendly your developers think it is. It doesn't help them at all. You take my privileges away, and that thing I used to do so easily doesn't do anymore. Good, okay, least privilege is a thing.
The words are need to know and least privileged, right? And this will save you because if anybody ever compromised my SSH key, we'd be in trouble. Guess how I found that out? Because I was doing my EO 14028 attestation, right, in December, and I was going through and doing a pipeline audit on user access, and I found out I could route to almost anything in the infrastructure, right? And it's because they added me to the infrastructure team 10 years ago and never took me out.
Okay, so latent horrors.
So I'm still in because I feel told them they can't take me out. I'm gonna, it'll be fine. I won't hurt anything. 25 years as a sysadmin of Linux boxes, I'll be okay. But yeah, no, the least privilege is a really big thing. But let's go back and talk about the original question is how has security changed? So when the Executive Order 14028 came out, right around that time, Google released a framework for securing your pipelines called Salsa. If you don't know what Salsa is, go find it. They released the original version, the .1 version, and it was brutal. I don't think anybody could achieve it without like massive security maturity. They've since backpedaled, and there's a lot of those guys that are maintainers here, and I give them a lot of, I've been hang out with them all day, but they have released the 1.2 spec, which is has build and source in it now. And so they've got the rules for the source control and the rules for the build control. You know, when I was talking about I locked down the build environment, that set of rules is how I did it. And I used the original ones that were brutal, but they have good, easier ones to accomplish now that probably make more sense than what I did. But so the executive order was just an executive order, and there was no, we didn't have to implement it, right? So 2 years later, or whatever it was, they said, okay, you're going to have to attest, right? If your software was built after September 2022, you're going to, if you have a government contract, you'll have to attest to this attestation form. And they put the attestation form out publicly and let us comment on it, and they didn't change anything, no matter what we said. Thank you, government. And then, so this is all CISA and NIST, in case you're wondering. And then those guys, that led us to our government contracts. We have to attest to the executive order to keep our government contracts. Well, that's a lot of my revenue, and I like my bonus. I know you do too. And so I got to keep that. So in December, we attested. And then all through this journey of the 2 years where I was closing up the security holes that some dude put in the pipeline, right? The thing I told my developers and my team is it's never going back. You're never not going to be concerned about security, right? Don't come to me and say, well, I don't care about security. No, it's not going back. If you like your bonus, which I do, it's not going back. And that's the high-level talk of security is never leaving our vocabulary again.
Let's go. This time, let's go Bob, then Ben.
It's in alphabetical order.
That's very good.
So it's interesting when I think about security and how it's evolved over time. So as we automated more and more, and we started taking away permissions in production, you can't access the cloud console anymore. I'll give you a concrete example. When I first joined Octopus Deploy, I could sign into our Azure account, and I could stop octopus.com, the website, because everyone had admin access.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so what could possibly go wrong? And so naturally, as we grew as a company, we grew more mature, and these appropriate permissions were taken away, replaced by, say, runbooks, replaced by different deployments, automation software, build automation software. As we actually increased our security posture in that sense by removing permissions, we still allowed developers to actually start deploying to production directly because we had all the automation, all the checks in place. So we felt this confidence build up. And so there's kind of a weird thing that happens where you take away something, but then you give them something even better. And I saw this happen when I implemented software delivery at a bank. Before, we couldn't even deploy up to the staging environment. That concept was just so foreign when I was a developer. And now, we go in, you just push a button, and because it passed all of these checks, we know it's going to be a consistent process every single time. We know these steps are going to run. We know the security scans are going to run. We know these various different things are going to run. So we can start trusting folks to push the button because we have that in place.
Thank you. Ben.
Yeah, so I think the biggest change for me that I've noticed, with the security transition, especially around delivery, has been with automation, like what you highlighted. And that's mostly because when I was at AWS, this was over 12 years ago, everything was manual. They would do manual pen testing. There was no code vetting or anything of that nature. But now, even to submit a PR, it does vetting, it does CVE scanning. So it does all of this now. And I think that is the biggest thing that I've seen this transition, more where automated securing of security tools being ran when you're doing your release. And maybe even after your release, just to maybe do some sort of pen test or checks of something of that nature. So that's probably the biggest thing I've seen.
Melissa, any comment?
Yeah, just one, short one. Emergency response. I think we've seen a lot of improvement in that area. So if we all expect that something will go wrong, something will get affected, we have better processes in place now to deal with that. Roll back, roll forward, whatever we need to do, we're starting to think in advance of those situations because we know they will happen.
Incident response. Kate, comment from you?
I think if I were to comment on anything, it would be Ben 2 statements ago, and it was about process. Process is really important as well for cybersecurity. It really, and I guess, Melissa, you're sort of talking about process as well. it's important to know the process in incident response or throughout your entire life cycle. When we would go and do application security workshops, I would say that, and we're talking, Fortune 50 companies, so many didn't have just a process. And by talking about process and building out a process really significantly helped.
And it gets you a promotion.
So I got to check time. What's our time limit?
He gave 10 minutes.
I did about 10 minutes ago.
We're way past time?
Yeah, we got 4 minutes.
Okay, we got 4 minutes. Good. All right.
You guys
So,
can't tell time?
Not in my head.
okay, so
Oh, I don't have a watch.
process for me has been sort of a swear word. So could you please, I'm from the developer side, right? Okay. Could you please explain how you've offset, you've added process, but somehow developers are happier. Why? Tell me stories. Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's typically you remove, it's the manual process is the dirty word. Manual is the actual dirty word. It's having to go through and asking developers, I need you to do this, or this. Or operations, I need you to do this, and this. They will always forget something. People are not good at doing repetitive processes over and over and over and over again. So by automation, that really is the key. And so you can add these additional steps into your automated process. That's where you get the security checks. That's where you can run the unit tests. That's when you can do the things like vulnerability scanning over and over again, and you always get that in place. And that's the automation, I think, is the key word, not necessarily the process.
Thanks, Brett.
So I'll give you the short answer. Codify your process, right? Codify your policy. Let the robots do it, okay? Robots don't sleep. Human beings can't focus all the time. Like some of us, what was I doing? Anyway, so some of us can't focus at all, right? And, like some of us are multitasking so hard that we can't do it. And then some people can't read. I give them a document that says do steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And they do step 1, 3, 5, 4, 2. And they call it and they hit me on the chat and go, why is it broke? And I'm like, okay. So codify it. Let the robots do it. They don't sleep. They'll mess up. But it was your fault they messed up because you wrote it wrong. But Bob, why did you do that? Anyway, but that's definitely something, and then this is all automation, right? But we keep calling it automation, but you're codifying your policy, right? You're codifying your process, and then you're removing the chance the human messes up. And then when you get blame, right, you find out that it was Ben.
Sorry, Brett.
Yep. Get blame is your friend. So now we go to the next thing. GitOps, okay? If you're not using your SCM for everything, start now, okay? Our documentation is in SCM, so that when someone misspells a word, I go get blame, and then I call them and I go, you misspelled this word, right? But the point is that, and Ralph and I were talking about this, I had, my management likes to change CMS systems all the time, right? And so I've got all this documentation in Wikipedia, right? And then they go, we're going to move to Confluence. And I was like, what? I'm not moving that doc. So I got mad, and I put all of my documentation into Markdown, put it in a Git repo, and then I have a GitHub action that runs our Python tool called Markdown to Confluence that publishes all of the documentation to Confluence. And when they swap the SCM, I'm going to write a new converter that does the same thing, right? And then I have all of the benefits of Git for my documentation, right? I know that, Naveen is the one who put that doc in there, right? And thank you very much for contributing to the doc. Developers never contribute to the doc. Thank you very much. So why didn't you? Anyway, so you do that with everything. So infrastructure as code, right? We talked about disaster recovery. Did we talk about disaster recovery? Do you guys ever? Oh, I don't know anything about disaster recovery. Anyway, but we talked about incident response.
Right.
But if your infrastructure is code, Bob can't log into the portal. Bob can't push the button that breaks production. Bob has to check in a PR that's reviewed by 2 humans, right? And it gets merged anyway because they just rubber stamped it. And then Bob broke it, and then I go get blame, and I was like, Bob, why'd you break the production? but he didn't have
Past
excessive.
Bob's a jerk to future Bob.
Right, right. So, and then the term in AI is called excessive agency, right? But it comes back to, we had to talk about AI,
Well
right?
done, well done.
So
Sorry.
AI, the term is called excessive agency. It's when you give a model too much permissions. If you tell a model, hey, you can delete stuff, that model's going to wake up one day and go, you know, I don't like this, and delete it, right? So the AI part of it is the excessive agency. Well, that works with humans too, right? I mean, Bob has no reason to have excessive agency. And then so as you close down all those holes and attack vectors, then you mature security, and then you can just push the button and it goes straight to prod.
Thank you.
If I could just close, just one thing. So the CD Foundation, we have a cybersecurity SIG, and we meet biweekly. Please come and join us. I would really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, panelists. Big hand, please. Thanks very much.